Hello, welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm Marie Cato. The Trump administration's official national security strategy published on Friday vows support for patriotic European parties that want to weaken the European Union. The long-expected document says the United States is seeking a quick end to the war in Ukraine to mitigate the risk of the conflict escalating into a Russia-Europe confrontation. The National Security Strategy is an official U.S. document highlighting its global security and foreign policy priorities. The current version codifies President Trump's America First approach and justifies his reversal of decades of U.S. policy towards Europe and the world. The strategy says that America's post-Cold War strategy of promoting free trade and globalization has fallen short by allowing allies and partners in Europe and Asia to take advantage of American economic and military power. In the section on Europe, the document argues that the continent's falling share of the world economy is less of a problem than what it calls a stark prospect of civilizational erasure that it blames on the European Union. The strategy accuses unnamed European governments of holding unrealistic expectations when it comes to ending the Ukraine war, arguing without providing evidence that these governments do not enjoy majority support in their own countries. In a reference to the Eurosceptic, anti-mainstream and often pro-Russian parties in Europe, the strategy says America wants them to press on and is optimistic about the growing influence of what it calls patriotic European parties. The strategy also claims that some NATO members will become majority non-European and, in an apparent blow to Moscow, says the alliance's open-door policy should turn into a pledge not to expand further. In an interview for TVP World, Radosław Sikorski, director of the Polish Institute of International Affairs, commented on the strategy and its implications.
There are, of course, many interesting points regarding U.S. foreign and security policy or some indications what should be done in the next years. But about Europe, from one hand, for U.S., Europe still is perceived as a very important place to make a business, and especially Central and Central Europe, including Poland. It means that U.S. accepts the current situation, the existence of NATO, and U.S. has its interest to have very strong relations with these countries. On the other hand, still in the U.S. administration, there is a belief that Russia is a threat for Europe, but not for U.S. itself. For U.S. itself, it's China. So that's why they really would like to make so-called strategic stability. It means that Russia should not be completely dependent on China and enlarge this, let's say, Chinese bloc. I have no reservation to this position. It's rather a positive signal for Europeans, especially from Central Europe, to invest in our ties, economic, cultural, political ties with United States.
Chinese President Xi Jinping and his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron have called for a ceasefire in the war in Ukraine, according to China's state broadcaster CCTV. This comes against the backdrop of the French head of state's fourth visit to China, aimed at strengthening bilateral ties. The two leaders expressed their support for all efforts geared towards achieving peace in Europe. President Xi Jinping also said his country, quote, will continue to play a constructive role in the political settlement of the crisis in its own way, according to the state-run outlet CCTV. China has long opposed economic sanctions on Russia, with Chinese-made drones being used by both sides in the conflict. According to a recent report by the Washington Post, Russia's surge in drone strikes on Ukraine has been driven by China increasing its exports of key components to Russia this summer. India has given Vladimir Putin a full ceremonial welcome in New Delhi, where he and Prime Minister Narendra Modi have opened summit talks focused on trade, defense cooperation and efforts to end the war in Ukraine. It is Putin's first visit to India in 4 years. Modi told Putin that India, quote, is not neutral and stands firmly on the side of peace, backing any credible efforts to end the conflict in Ukraine. Putin thanked him for what he called India's attention and efforts toward a possible negotiated settlement. The visit comes as New Delhi balances historic ties with Moscow against pressure from Washington, which imposed tariffs in response to India's purchases of discounted Russian oil. Russia remains India's top arms supplier, and both sides want to expand trade to $100 billion by 2030. Putin arrived on Thursday to an embrace from Modi and a state welcome complete with a 21-gun salute. Frozen Russian assets, rather than the money of European taxpayers, should be used to rebuild Ukraine's war-ravaged cities, Ukrainian MP Kira Rudik told TVP World. Her comments come as European leaders look for ways to unlock billions of euros that are being held in Belgium. Rudik said Moscow should not be allowed to use legal means to recover the funds after ignoring international laws and committing war crimes during its invasion.
There should be a broader discussion and broader agreement on how the responsibility will be distributed. However, when we are discussing this, it's so absolutely outrageous how Russia started a full-scale invasion, committed all kinds of the war crimes, and the European leaders are worried that at some point they will be responsible to certain international laws, all of them that Russia broke. And so an aggressor can get away with anything, and then good law-obeying people from Europe are worried that the law will come after them. And this is something that I just cannot accept, because it should be that if you break the international laws, then they don't apply to you. Then you cannot demand anything back. And it's such a just and good and fair thing to do is to make Russia pay for all the destructions that are happening in Ukraine, to use their funds to support Ukraine right now and not the funds of European taxpayers.
A social media video has emerged of what appears to be a drone strike on a high-rise building in Grozny in the Russian Republic of Chechnya. Images posted on X show smoke rising from a gaping hole in a blue glass building that War Translated claims is near the Federal Security Service offices. The Nexta site reports that the structure hosts the Chechen Security Council and several other government bodies. Airports across the North Caucasus were reportedly temporarily closed overnight. Nexta said that it was the second drone strike on the region in a week after UAVs struck an FSB facility in Akhoy Martan. Leaders of Baltic states have come together to reiterate their support for Ukraine and the country's path to peace. The presidents of Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia agreed that Russia must be made to negotiate through strength.
We are paid to protect our own countries and to make sure that also our friends are getting the best possible deal. But then those people who are now thinking about those kind of things, they should make also decisions about frozen Russian assets. Because if we really want to make a difference, that's number one issue. Number two, it's about sanctions. Number three, it's about defense capabilities, the further assistance to Ukraine.
We have to motivate and to bring Russia closer to negotiations table. How we can do it? Through strength. First of all, I would stress the importance of sanctions. And we are considering right now the 20th package of sanctions, which should be imposed on Russia. And of course, consistent and strong military support to Ukraine. There are no questions and doubts that we have to support Ukraine with, by all means, what they need in order to preserve the stability on the battlefield, because Russia tries to prevail.
You all see that Putin doesn't want any kind of peace. Instead, he's putting pressure on Ukraine, and winter is coming and so forth. So what we can do is to more we do at this very moment to support Ukraine, and the question was also whether we know what's going on. We are in direct and indirect contact with President Zelensky and others, so we do know approximately what's going on. Of course, we are not behind the table. We don't know what exactly the discussions are, but we get the information from President Zelensky.
Classic car ownership comes with many challenges and is generally painful on the pocket. One Welsh pensioner, though, is celebrating a rust to riches story. After buying an Aston Martin like the famous James Bond car for around £900 in 1973, it was later left to rot in his drive for decades. But now it's been fully restored and experts estimate the car is worth around £1 million.
It's one of the most well-known cars in the world, James Bond's Aston Martin DB5, equipped with a wealth of gadgets, revolving number plates for disguise, pop-out gun barrels behind the lights, a bullet shield for protection during chases. Driven in the hit 1964 film Goldfinger, it was as much of a star as Sean Connery, capturing the hearts and minds of car fans across the world. So much so that one boy from Wales made up his mind to own one of the iconic vehicles. And in 1973, at the height of the UK fuel crisis, after saving every penny he could, at the age of just 19, tractor driver and council worker John Williams bought one.
Heated rear window, 5-speed box, etc. Many bills. 1985.
For years, he used it as his daily form of transport, to and from work as part of a council road crew.
Family and responsibilities happened, and I'm afraid it stayed on the driveway for about 40 years in disrepair.
But then, life took over. One mechanic told them the Titanic was probably in a better condition. But now, nearly 50 years on, Williams and his wife have worked with a classic car company to painstakingly restore the DB5 to its original glory.
Oh, look at that.
Williams revealed that he had had offers to buy the car when it was a wreck.
I'd had offers to buy it, and times when I could have done with the money. But I'd resisted because, well, as Sue said to me, you know, you'll never get another one.
And those decades of waiting have paid off. Not only does it look stunning, the car's rarity means it is now worth around £1 million.
And that's all for World News. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more on TVP World. Goodbye.